Hey, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini, and I'm back with another tips video here. I want to share with you 3 things to consider before you buy yourself a rotary cutter. Now, as you can see, this is only a small portion, but I have amassed a large collection of rotary cutters, and that is because I've been teaching for a long time. I host retreats. I'm oftentimes in a room with a lot of people and everybody needs a rotary cutter. So I have also been able to use all these different types of rotary cutters over the years, so I'm sharing with you my knowledge and experience here. The first thing I want you to consider is what you are cutting. Nowadays, it's not just quilters that are using rotary cutters, but also paper crafters, those of us that make garments. A lot of people are realizing how crisp and straight we can cut lines with a rotary cutter. If you're a quilter, you're oftentimes matching it up with a ruler. And of course, no matter what you're cutting, you need the rotary cutting mat. So here are a few different sizes. Now, when I say you need to consider what types of material you will be cutting, it's mostly due to the size of the rotary cutter that I would recommend. This little tiny one here is an 18mm blade. Because it is so small, you can imagine that you can maneuver into some really tight spaces, curvy things. I oftentimes will use this in some more art and freehand type of quilting projects where I'm cutting little curves and just freehand cutting as I go, okay? The next size up is this 28mm. This is a good one to have in between. I always go for the smaller ones if I'm cutting curves. Now, you may be wondering when you might cut curves. Here's an example of a garment pattern of a cardigan that I'm making for my daughter. So when you have pattern pieces that have curves like this does, if you have a super large, like a 60mm blade like this one, you're gonna have a really hard time coming down this way and not clipping right into the pattern because that curve turns so sharply. So if you are cutting out pattern pieces, no matter what it's for, that have some type of curves, whether they're convex or concave curves, I would definitely recommend something in this range of the 28mm because it's smaller and is going to more easily allow you to take that curve while you're cutting the pattern piece and through to your fabric pieces, okay? So beyond that, so we said this little guy, then this one, you know, the smaller the job or the tighter the curves, the smaller the blade I would recommend. This is going to be the one that I use 98% of the time. This is the one that you oftentimes will find. It's a 45mm and it allows me to cut most of the things. Now, I make quilts, I make handbags, I make clothes. I have a lot of different projects, and I would say if you are only in the market for one, okay, if your budget only allows you to get one, then this is the size that I would recommend, okay? 45mm, I can still get around this curve. I just have to slow down a bit more. A little more cumbersome than the smaller blade, but you can still get it done, okay? This large one, when would you need something like this? Now, because the blade is bigger, if you're cutting straight lines, you're gonna cut them quicker because the blade covers more space on your project, okay? Also, because it's bigger and thicker, this is a great one for cutting through quilt layers, meaning the full quilt sandwich, the bulkier layers, something that includes fabric, then batting or some type of fusible fleece or foam. Oftentimes people like this larger one to cut through that because it's bulkier and thicker, and the larger blade allows you to cut through that and finish that job a little bit more quickly. All right, so that is my first thing that I want you to consider, what you are cutting. If you're only cutting through paper and paper crafts, then you can probably get away with one of these two little guys, okay? But the bigger the project, the more heavy duty, the more layers, the bigger the size you want to go. Now, the second thing I'd like for you to consider before you start using or buying a rotary cutter is who has access to your supplies. Whether you have it tucked away in a plastic bin under a dining room table, or if you have your own sewing room, you want to keep that in mind because not all of these have safeties that are created equal. So I will show you. These guys, for example, the safety on it is here. So if you see behind the blade, you can see the yellow plastic. That means that I can't cut with it the way that it is right here. But if you press down into this and slide it down, you can see that the yellow safety blade has slid back and now the blade is fully exposed. So when you're cutting fabric, this is how you need to have it. Like this, the blade is exposed. Obviously, whatever it comes in contact with, it's going to cut it. So what happens? When I set this down, it stays open. So some of you maybe live by yourself. you don't have pets, you don't have kids, that might not be a big deal for you. You can leave it like that for a day or two. You know, when you come back to your space to work on your project, it's probably going to be still in that same position. I have kids, and I could never leave this like this. And my kids are older now, but if you have toddlers especially, or cats and dogs and pets that like to climb up on your stuff, this is not the type of rotary cutter that I would recommend unless you make absolutely sure that every time, as soon as you cut, before you even place it on the table, you slide that up and then position it. If you've watched any of my videos in the past where I use these types of rotary cutters, I would often get comments from people saying, you forgot to put the blade up. But it's because they are assuming when I go like this, I set it down so quickly that it looks like I didn't put the blade up. But it's just ingrained in me to always, before I dare put that rotary cutter down, the blade always goes down in order to make sure that the safety is on the blade. So if you know you might run into those situations and you don't want to risk it, I would stay away from these types, okay? I prefer this one, all right? And this is a rotary cutter that has like an ergonomic handle, and you can see it has a safety lock, this red button. When it's pressed in on this side, I can then squeeze the handle and the blade comes up. It's in the cutting position. When I let it go, meaning as soon as you're done cutting and you set it down, the blade does not stay open because it's only open when you have the handle squeezed. So this is the one that I like to have around my shop, my studio, and absolutely around my retreaters when I host retreats. Now these retreats are for grown-ups, but a lot of people who are used to sewing at home and leaving the blades like this now come to a retreat, and you're now in a room with 10, 12, 20 something other ladies typically who don't always leave their blade like that. And when you have a lot of hands at a cutting table, somebody can easily tap this, cut themselves, it can fall on the floor. I know a lot of you love to sew barefoot. If this hits your foot, it is not going to be pretty. And so for my retreats, because I provide the rotary cutters, I always provide these ones. That way, whoever's done using it just sets it down and it's always covered up, all right? Now the safety to lock this is by pressing the red button on this side. If I push it in from the back side here, you can see that when I try to press the handle, nothing happens because it's locked. So this is just what I prefer to use, and it's what I've switched to in more recent years. All right. And then this one also allows you to switch it from a right-handed rotary cutter to a left-handed rotary cutter, which I know a lot of you have problems with cutting with these right-handed rotary cutters, okay? Something like this, the blade is on the left side, so this is more for right-handed cutters. But this one, you can see that there is kind of a depressed area here where you can unscrew this, remove the blade from this side, and actually just install it on this side, and then you would be able to cut left-handed. So all in all, this is my favorite. I will include a link on where you can find some of these in the description box below for those of you if you're interested. And then there are some other ones. Olfa makes different types of decorative blades for this type of handle. You can only use these blades on these types of handles as far as I know, and from watching some of the Olfa company videos. So this is a pinked edge. If you do a lot of paper cutting or crafts, that kind of stuff where you're going to leave something with this raw edge, this might be an option for you. But again, if you press in and up, the blade is exposed. If you drop it down, the blade is still exposed. So I'm not a huge fan of these for safety reasons. Now there are a lot of other ones on the market. This is just some that I pulled from my collection. These ones are kind of designed to be more ergonomic. So like you press this here and you can swing this blade back. It also has the depression on this side where you can make this be a right-handed or a left-handed blade. It's actually in the left-hand cutting position as it is right here. The safety is here. You can see that I kind of have to press really hard on it. It's not as smooth, doesn't glide quite as easily as I like. And then you would cut like this if you're left-handed, okay? So if you are left-handed, or maybe you like to cut with, you see, this is, I don't want to like slide my finger and cut myself with the blade, but it's not the smoothest. But that's an option, and I believe with this one you can also cut this way. You know, you can like put in different angles and position it. I'm not a fan of these, but just know that there are some other options. If you need something with a more ergonomic handle, you can get something like that. This one is the same. And actually, I went right into the third thing I was going to tell you to consider before you get a rotary cutter, and that is whether you're right-handed or left-handed. So obviously, if you're left-handed, make sure that you read and see that the rotary cutter you're going to get allows you to either switch the blade or it might be standalone, like designed for left-handed cutting, okay? So again, this tends to be my absolute favorite for the safety reasons, for the fact that you can just unscrew this and swap off the blade to the other side, so it can be for both left and right-handed cutters, and that when you stop squeezing the blade, it locks itself or puts itself into safety mode, and then you can easily just lock this for transportation. If you're putting all your supplies in a bag to go somewhere, you know that you're not gonna have that blade just popping out because something pressed the handle. So all in all, this one is my favorite. I will include links on where you can find some of these and these guys in the smaller sizes as well. And there you have it. Those are the 3 things I recommend that you consider before you purchase a rotary cutter for yourself. Now, if you're looking for any of the ones I featured in this video, I'll include links to where you can find them in the description box below. If you enjoyed the video, hit it with a thumbs up, share it with your crafty friends, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. When you're buying your rotary cutters. Now, if you're looking for any of the ones that I've featured in this video, I'll include links for you below in the description box. Why am I even holding these? Wow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I can't find the remote.